Alrighty, guys, welcome back to another Hive Mind Deck Tech. Tonight we got Sparky. Sparky, tell me what this amalgamation of cards is, please.
I like to call this Stillman Necro. Friend of the channel, Steve Stillman, actually just took down our local RCQ with this deck, running Necro Dominance, the One Ring, Soul Spikes. If you've ever played with a card called Necro Potence, you'd be very familiar with what's going on here. You're trying to keep the card advantage flowing from turn one, if you can. You have the availability to evoke a Grief, use it to a Phyrexian Tower, and put Necro Dominance into play on turn two, sometimes turn three, obviously later in the game. And then you have
busted.
And then you have a whole bunch of pitch spells, from the Soul Spikes to March of Wretched Sorrow, to bring your life total back up, to then use it and turn it back into cards with the Necro Dominance.
Sure. So let's start with some of the creature packages here, because I'm noticing that there's an abnormally small amount of land count. So let's go through some of these creatures.
So if you notice, there is 4, 8, 12 extra from the Malakir Rebirths, Felda Profane, and Bogart Trawler, which are coming from mostly MH3 and then some cards from the Zendikar sets. That allow you to have more lands in your deck, but they're also black cards that can pitch to the Soul Spikes and pitch to the March of Wretched Sorrow. We also have some pitch cards in the sideboard, like the Force of Despair, which is also pretty good. But it's all about trying to keep as many black-colored cards in your hand that you could eventually pitch to do some amount of damage, remove problematic creatures, cast Grief, do some kind of scamming. It's almost like a scam deck. Better version with better draw spells. This is a little bit better than Fable of the Mirror Breaker, obviously, in this deck. And we also have the One Rings to protect ourselves and also, keep the card advantage engine going.
Wow, it's almost like it's sort of this weird sort of like 40 deck that you have to like hide behind a One Ring in order to survive a little bit. But the Necro Dominance really kind of like propels you into a winning position. I've only ever had the opportunity to play against this deck. I haven't actually had an opportunity to pilot it myself. However, I've noticed that a lot of players like to go really deep on the Necropotence.
Basically what's going to happen is you're just going to put yourself to a low life total and then pretty much use your mana and the other cards that you have to gain your life back to keep the engine going. So whether it's a Soul Spike, whether it's March, whether it's the Wombo combo of having Shieldred out, drawing 15 cards, gaining 30 life, that's not that bad when you think about it.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah. I don't know a lot of decks that can do 30 damage in one clip. There are obviously some out there that can do that or can just win in general. Also, the One Ring gives you some amount of protection right now with Nadu still in the format, where they can't really attack you, target you. They're going to have to Thassa's Oracle their way through it. And in certain aspects, you can deal with that. We have Surgical Extractions. We also have Plague Engineer, which could be named on Insect. And maybe they don't produce guys that they can keep equipping the Shuko with. Right?
So speaking of the sideboard cards, let's go through this sideboard stuff a little bit more top down here.
2 Thoughtseizes. Those are for the control decks. You want to be able
notably, you're on Inquisitions in the main board because your life total is very much a resource here.
Yes, right? Your life total is a resource, especially against decks that use your life total to kill you. So the aggressive decks, you kind of don't want to have Thoughtseize. You're going to use Inquisition as your discard source. Sometimes it can bone you because they don't have cards that fit 3 or less in their deck, and you can't discard anything. That kind of stinks, especially against a lot of the Eldrazi decks. But we have the Thoughtseizes, Soulless Jailers for the decks that are trying to play more of an unfair game, play more than one spell in one turn, stuff like that. We have our Break the Ices for the Eldrazi matchup, which is really important. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where we can overload it, but with Break the Ice and Surgical Extraction, we can at least take the Tron pieces out of their deck, which is a bonus.
It's a neat little wombo combo there.
And then we have 5 Graveyard Hate cards. I personally have been playing Goryo's Vengeance a lot, and this is one of their bad matchups because they actually have 4 main deck ways to make you exile your graveyard. And then when they bring in the Cling to Dust, the Surgicals, and the Douthies, it makes it even more of a bad matchup, relatively speaking.
Yeah, I even think a post-board turn 1 Douthie is pretty crazy with a Phyrexian Tower, Grief your opponent, sack the Grief to the Phyrexian Tower, make 2 black.
Yeah,
use the 2 black for your Douthie. That is probably the nuts turn 1 playing against Goryo. So
there's a lot of good lines that you have moving forward with that stuff. You can also bring in the Jailers against them, so none of their stuff can come into play.
Yep.
Because there's cards like Fatal Push that aren't that good, and other cards relatively in the deck that really don't help you against that matchup.
Right.
But all in all, the deck looks really interesting. I've done a bunch of reading, thanks to Reed Duke, thanks to Stillman for pointing me in the right direction. And this should be fun. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure I'll be on camera at some point, but this is one of the hardest decks to play. I'm going to give myself a fair shake at like a 3-2. If I do better than that, I think that's a good outing for what I did.
Sure.
Because the main problem comes with how much life you're going to pay. That can make or break your game.
And let's talk about Necro Dominance a little bit here. So like it's a little bit of a confusing wording for some, for a newer card.
Yes,
so
it's a trigger. At the beginning of your end step, it triggers.
Correct.
That goes on the stack. Your opponent can do something or they don't do something. If they don't do anything, you pick the number, and then once you pick the number and set it, it goes to resolve.
Now, does your opponent get to know the number before the?
No, because it's not like a pay activation. Sure. It's a triggered effect that goes on the stack.
Right.
It doesn't get set until you make the choice, and you make the choice as it resolves.
Got it.
So your opponent can play a Bowmaster, and then you can just be like, I'm not going to pay anything. Sure. Bowmaster is obviously really good against it, but like you kind of have to keep that in mind when you're playing against other decks that could be playing Bowmaster, right, like Dimir Frog and the Mardu energy decks. It also does reduce your hand size by 5, which is something to keep track of. Absolutely. And I'm also going to try my best not to get any game rules violations, because it also says I don't draw cards. I skip my draw step. It's one of the most important things to remember to do at all times.
Yeah. Because if you don't end up winning off of doing a big Necro Dominance dump turn, you still have to discard the hand size, and all that stuff is going into exile. So you have no ability to get that stuff back.
Interesting tips and tricks. You can't scam with Necro Dominance in play.
Because it exiles.
Because it exiles the grief. So target it's a legal target, but it won't come back into play.
Right.
Because it'll be exiled.
That's
so yeah. There's a lot of things to keep in mind while you're playing it, and I'm just going to try and play quickly and win quickly.
I think over the last couple of months, like pre MH3, we've seen like many different iterations of like Mason Clark's Mono Black Scam. I think this is kind of this
is the epitome of what that deck is.
Yeah.
It is mess with your opponent's hand, get something big into play, and then get your card advantage engine going, and then win the game with it.
Yeah.
You're going to whittle your opponent down. They're going to be taking 4 from your attack. They're going to be taking 2 when they draw. And then
they're going to be fetching and shocking.
They're going to be fetching and shocking. You're only going to really need to do 2 or 3 soul spikes, and then your opponent's dead.
Yeah.
So that's what it comes down to.
All right, man. This deck looks like a lot of fun. If you don't do well with it this week, maybe your boy takes it for a spin next week. We'll see.
By all means.
We'll see how you do tonight, Sparky. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
It's been another Hive Mind Deck Tech. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Peace out.